Hi there, guys. I decided to do a part two because there's more to the sowing and the wheat and the tares. Um, and one of the things that is very prevalent with the sowing of, or with the wheat and the tares, is that there is actually um, a means of protecting oneself. Because remember, it's not just um, when we hear the word of God, which is something that increases on our spirit, but it's also when we hear negative things that the wheat and the tares, the way, it's the sower, the sowing and the reaping. The wheat and tares is also important, but the sowing and the reaping and those different stages that you find yourself with regards to the ground. Okay, so think of yourself as a vacant plot, and as a vacant plot, you have an owner. Now, you can either choose, I said this before, but you can either choose the owner, Jesus Christ, or you can choose yourself, which inadvertently means you choose the enemy, because you yourself cannot uphold yourself. You don't know what happens tomorrow. You don't know what happens in a few years, but God does, and He can uphold you, and He can keep to His promises. We unfortunately can't, because we're not perfect. The enemy will take hold. He will take over, and even though you are careful, he can still mess up your plans, okay, or turn your plans into his plans, which ultimately leads to your destruction. So one of the things to understand is that the hardened ground, where the Bible talks about where your ground is hardened and the seeds don't land, cannot penetrate, and they spring up and then they get scorched by the sun. What you must understand about this is when someone says something negative to you, they call you a loser, or they call, they're disrespecting you. One of the things that makes the seed land or penetrate the ground is the reaction. If there is solid ground, has no reaction, it either deflects or just doesn't react. So when you do not react in the way that would satisfy your flesh, but you act in a way that would satisfy the spirit, then you get the fulfillment of the spirit, which is that person will not be able to, what they say, they will need to keep saying it because it will keep on returning back to them. Okay, so negativity can only be, remember, you have I'm speaking deep stuff now, but you have the ability, God has given us the ability to accept and to reject. That's why we can rebuke. What this means is when someone says something about you in a negative sense, according to the Bible, you don't have to accept it. You don't have to accept their truth. You can accept God's truth, and God's truth, which is that you are made, you are wonderfully and fearfully made. So when you accept that truth, the other truth or the other negative word cannot discourage you, because you're not really paying attention to it. One of the things that Jesus has taught me is reaction. When Jesus was preaching, or when he was speaking, and the Pharisees would either try to interrupt him, or they would ask him, like, as for example, they asked him the question, by whose authority are you teaching? Now I'm paraphrasing, so just bear with me. By whose authority are you teaching? Are you teaching this? And then he didn't respond to them the way they wanted him to respond. Instead, he said to them, I will ask you a question. So he didn't respond to their question, he asked them a question. God always, this is what is so very unique and so amazing about Jesus, is that the way he responded kept him in charge. He didn't respond emotionally. All he said was, I ask you a question. By who was the baptism, I think it was the baptism given? Was it from John or was it from God? And they were in a catch-22. They deliberated with themselves, and they figured out that they can't answer. And then he said, okay, well, if you can't answer, then I will also not tell you by what authority I do this. You see, Jesus was in charge of that entire conversation, all because he understood that he did not need to accept what they had to say. And that is when we really get closer to Jesus. We start to learn to master not just our emotions, but our reactions. And when you learn to master your reaction, you will find more peace. You don't have to accept somebody else's chaos. You can find complete peace. And this is what the sower and the reaping, the sowing and the seed talks about. So when it's positive things, you can be as soil, and you can accept it, and it will blossom. But when it's negative things, you can be as hard ground, and you can not allow it to land. You can either, as Jesus did, deflect the question, okay, not pay attention to the negativity, or you can just simply not react. And one of the things that one can find is whenever someone is trying to belittle someone and there is no reaction, you will find that person will try to increase their efforts because they keep receiving it back to them. And that is something that, again, it's in the Bible. You see, it's when you are trying to remove the mote out of somebody else's eye, but you've got a mote in your own eye, it's kind of saying to you, it will always fix yourself first before you try to fix others. Okay, it's like practice what you preach, kind of. And then one of the other things is also where the seeds, when the seeds fall in thorny ground. You see, you can choke out discouragement. Okay, so there's a positive, there's a negative to this, but there's also a positive. God gave us the tools in the Word, but you will not find these kinds of things if you don't seek ye first the kingdom, so that all these other things can be added. When you find out that you can choke out discouragement, so for instance, let's say you have a dream, or you have a goal, or you have a plan, and you tell it to someone that you trust, and this person starts to discourage you and say, no, it's not going to work out. And sometimes they mean well. They don't mean bad. Sometimes they mean well. But you can take those seeds, and let's say the seeds land, okay, and they're starting to blossom. You're starting to feel fearful, doubtful about, pursuing the idea. Then what you can do through the Word of God, you can choke it out. And choking it out means that you go against, it's like you don't have to accept the doubts, or you don't have to accept somebody else's purview as the only purview. You can take it to God and you can say, I had this experience, I'm laying it at your feet, please give me your peace again. That's why the Word is there. The Word is not only there to encourage, but also to remove, to clean up. So it will be able to choke out, as the thorns, to choke out that discouragement. Okay, and I think it's only those three. And then the fowler is obviously the one that comes to kind of steal the idea. I'll speak about that another time, but that's the basic gist of it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you were blessed, and I hope you were encouraged, because it blessed me and it's encouragement to me. I'm learning as you're learning, and God bless. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.